She disappeared after the Duke chose another. Now he's tearing England apart to find her. I had a choice to make. I could stay in the warm library with a man who wanted to force himself on me, or I could run out into the freezing darkness of the Yorkshire moors. I chose the storm. I ran until my lungs burned. I ran until the mud sucked the shoes off my feet. I ran until I collapsed in the heather, waiting for the cold to take me. I didn't know that help was coming. I didn't know that a black carriage was tearing up the driveway at that exact moment. I didn't know that the Duke of Blackwood was about to kick down the front door and strangle the man who hurt me. Tonight, the chase ends. Tonight, the truth comes out. And tonight, on a freezing stone bridge in the middle of nowhere, the Duke finally catches his runaway. Get your tissues ready. This is the moment you have been waiting for. If you are ready for the rescue, hit that like button, and make sure you are subscribed, because after this storm comes the calm and the proposal. And, if this is the first part of this story you're coming across, check my channel for the part 1 since there are 2 parts in total. Now, let's run. The library at Thornfield Hall was usually my sanctuary. Tonight, it was a trap. Outside, the storm of the century was battering the walls. The wind howled like a banshee, rattling the window panes in their lead frames. Inside, the only sound was the heavy breathing of Lord Croft. He stood between me and the door. He had been drinking. His face was flushed, his cravat loosened, and his eyes were dark with a hunger that made my stomach turn. "Don't be difficult, Alice," he slurred, taking a step toward me. "I'm tired of playing games. You are a servant. I am the master. It's a simple equation." I backed away until my hips hit the heavy oak desk. I looked around for a weapon. The letter opener? Too far away. The heavy brass lamp? Too heavy. "My lord, please," I said, my voice shaking. "You are drunk. Let me leave." "Leave?" He laughed. A cruel, wet sound. "And go where? Into that?" He pointed to the window, where the rain was coming down in sheets. "You'll die out there in an hour." "No, my dear. You are staying right here." He lunged. He moved faster than I expected for a heavy man. His hand clamped around my wrist, his fingers digging into my skin. He pulled me toward him, his breath smelling of stale port and rot. "No!" I screamed, struggling. "Let me go! Stop fighting!" He growled, trying to pull me into an embrace. "I didn't think," I reacted. My free hand groped blindly behind me on the desk. My fingers closed around a heavy, leather-bound book, a dictionary. I swung it with all the strength I had left. The corner of the book connected with his temple. Lord Croft yelled, stumbling back. He released my wrist to clutch his head. Blood began to trickle through his fingers. "You little witch!" he roared, his eyes focusing on me with pure rage. I didn't wait. I hitched up my skirts and ran. I darted past him, wrenched the door open, and sprinted into the hallway. "Come back here!" he shouted behind me. I heard his heavy footsteps giving chase. I couldn't go to my room. The lock was broken. I couldn't hide in the kitchen. The servants were loyal to him. I ran to the front door. I threw the bolts back with trembling hands. The door flew open, caught by the wind, and slammed against the stone wall. The storm hit me like a physical blow. The rain was freezing, sharp as needles. The wind tried to push me back inside, but I would rather die in the cold than let that man touch me again. I ran out into the night. I ran blindly across the lawn, toward the moors. The darkness was absolute. I couldn't see the path. I stumbled over heather roots, falling into the mud, scrambling up again. My dress was soaked instantly, clinging to my legs, dragging me down. I had no cloak, no bonnet, just my thin governess dress. I ran until the lights of the manor disappeared. I ran until the cold started to seep into my bones, making my limbs feel heavy and numb. I reached the old stone bridge that crossed the swollen river. My legs gave out. I collapsed against the rough stone wall. I curled into a ball, shivering so violently my teeth chattered. Sebastian, I thought, my mind starting to drift. I'm sorry I left the ring. I'm sorry. The cold wasn't painful anymore. It felt warm, sleepy. I closed my eyes. Minutes later, a carriage careened up the driveway of Thornfield Hall. The horses were foaming, their eyes wide with terror. The carriage didn't even stop fully before the door flew open. Sebastian leaped out. He didn't look like a duke. He looked like an avenging angel. His coat was soaked, his hair plastered to his forehead, his eyes wild. He ran up the steps, through the open front door that was banging in the wind. He found Lord Croft in the hallway, holding a handkerchief to his bleeding head, shouting at a terrified maid. "Find her!" Croft was yelling. "I want her arrested! She assaulted me!" Sebastian stopped. He looked at the blood on Croft's head. He looked at the open door. He walked over to Lord Croft. "Where is she?" Sebastian asked. His voice was terrifyingly calm. Croft looked up, blinking. "Who the devil are you?" Sebastian grabbed Croft by the lapels of his smoking jacket and slammed him against the wall. The family portraits rattled. "I am the Duke of Blackwood," Sebastian snarled, his face inches from Croft's. "And the woman you just assaulted is my future wife. Now tell me where she is, or I will kill you with my bare hands." Croft turned pale. The arrogance evaporated. The governess? Where did she go?" Sebastian shook him. "She ran," Croft stammered, pointing to the open door. "She hit me and ran out, into the storm. She went toward the moors." Sebastian shoved him away with disgust. Croft slid down the wall. "The moors?" Sebastian whispered, looking at the black rectangle of the doorway. "She'll freeze to death." He turned to his valet, James, who had just run in. "Get the carriage lamps," Sebastian ordered. "Uncouple the horses. We ride." "Sir," James cried, "you can't ride in this. It's suicide." "I am not leaving her out there." Sebastian ran back out into the rain. He didn't wait for a saddle. He grabbed the mane of the lead carriage horse, a massive black stallion, and vaulted onto its bare back. "Elara!" he screamed into the wind. He kicked the horse into a gallop, disappearing into the dark. I was dreaming. I was dreaming that I was back at Blackwood House. The fire was lit. I was warm. Then, I heard a sound. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. It sounded like a heartbeat. Or hooves. "Elara!" A voice. A deep, desperate voice. I opened my eyes. A light was bobbing in the darkness. A lantern. A massive shape loomed over me. A horse. And a man jumping down from it. Landing in the mud. He fell to his knees beside me. Hands warm, frantic hands grabbed my shoulders. "Elara! Oh God, Elara!" I looked up. Lightning flashed, illuminating his face. It was him, Sebastian. But he looked wrong. He was crying. Rain and tears were streaming down his face. He looked wrecked. "You're a ghost," I whispered, my lips numb. "Go away." "I am not a ghost," he choked out. He pulled me up, dragging me into his chest. His body heat hit me like a furnace. "I am here. I found you." I struggled weakly. The delirium was twisting my mind. I remembered the ballroom. I remembered the lady in the silver dress. "No," I moaned, pushing against his sodden coat. "Let me go. You have to go back." "I am never letting you go," he said fiercely, wrapping his arms tighter. "Go back to your wife," I sobbed, the pain breaking through the cold. "Go back to Genevieve. Leave me alone." Sebastian grabbed my face. He forced me to look at him. "I have no wife," he shouted over the roar of the wind. I froze. "What?" "I didn't marry her," he yelled. "I sent her away, Elara. The morning you left. I sent her away." I stared at him. The water dripped from his hair onto my face. You didn't marry her? How could I? Sebastian's voice broke. I woke up and you were gone, and I realized, God, Ilara, I realized that a palace is just a pile of stones without you. He pulled off his heavy greatcoat. He wrapped it around me, engulfing me in his scent leather, rain, and sandalwood. I have spent 90 days looking for you, he whispered, pressing his forehead against mine. I have torn this country apart. I haven't slept. I haven't lived. I have just been searching. Why? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I am just a servant. No, he said, pulling me into his lap, rocking me as the rain hammered down around us. You are my heart. You are my soul. And if you had died out here tonight, I would have laid down right next to you and never got up. The warmth was returning. Not just from the coat, but from him. He lifted me up. He was strong, shaking with adrenaline. He carried me toward the horse. We are going home, Ilara, he said into my ear. We are going home, and I promise you, you will never be cold again. I rested my head against his shoulder. The storm was still raging, but for the first time in 3 months, the silence inside me was gone. On the edge of death, in the middle of a storm, the Duke finally admitted the truth. But the danger isn't over yet. Ilara is weak, freezing, and possibly ill, and they are miles from home. Join me tomorrow for the grand finale. Chapter 5. The recovery, the return to London, and the proposal that will shock the entire world. The Duke promised to manage his heart. Now, we get to see him do it. The Duke begged for my forgiveness and gave me the deed to his castle. The storm was raging outside, but for the first time in 3 months, I wasn't cold. I woke up in a strange bed, wrapped in warm blankets, and sleeping in the chair next to me, still wearing his mud-stained coat, looking like he hadn't slept in a week, was the Duke of Blackwood. He had found me. He had saved me. But as I lay there, watching his chest rise and fall, I was terrified. Did he save me out of pity? Was he going to offer me my old job back? Was he going to take me home and then return to his search for a wealthy bride? When he opened his eyes, he didn't just give me an answer. He gave me a piece of paper that changed everything. He didn't offer me a job. He handed me the deed to his entire estate. He put his fortune in my hands and told me that without me, none of it mattered. This is it. The finale. The moment the girl from the shadows finally steps into the light. If you are ready for the happiest of happy endings, hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because next week, we are starting a brand new romance that involves a pirate, a lady, and a very scandalous abduction. But for now, let's go to the wedding. I floated in and out of darkness for days. Sometimes I was burning up, lost in the fever. I would dream of the moors, of the cold rain, of Lord Croft's angry hands. But every time the nightmare came, a voice would pull me back. I am here, Ilara. You are safe. Stay with me. Cool cloths were placed on my forehead. Strong hands held a cup of water to my lips. When the fever finally broke, it was night. The room was illuminated only by the glow of the hearth. I blinked, my eyes adjusting to the light. I was in a small, cozy room at an inn. The wooden beams were low, and the smell of wood smoke and lavender filled the air. I turned my head. Sebastian was asleep in a wooden chair pulled right up to the bedside. He looked wrecked. His dark hair was matted, his jaw was covered in stubble. His fine linen shirt was stained with mud and soot. He was holding my hand, his fingers laced through mine even in sleep, as if he were an anchor keeping me from drifting away. I squeezed his hand weakly. His eyes snapped open instantly. The gray eyes that used to be so guarded were wide with panic. Ilara? He leaned forward, his other hand flying to my forehead to check my temperature. You're awake! The fever is gone! He let out a breath that sounded like a sob. He slumped forward, pressing his forehead against our joined hands. "Thank God," he whispered. I thought I was too late. "You found me," I rasped. My voice was scratchy. "I will always find you," he said fiercely, looking up. "I told you. I would search for 1,000 years." He poured me water, supporting my head while I drank. The tenderness in his movements was shocking. This was the man who used to bark orders about ledgers and schedules. Now, he was serving me like a nursemaid. "Sebastian," I said, pushing the cup away gently. "We need to talk. About before." He stiffened. He set the cup down and sat back. "Yes," he said. "We do." He reached into the inside pocket of his ruined coat. He pulled out a folded, thick document. It looked official. My heart sank. A contract, I thought. He has drawn up a contract for my employment. He wants me back as his companion. He wants to formalize the arrangement. He handed it to me. "What is this?" I asked, afraid to open it. "Read it." I unfolded the heavy paper. The legal script was dense, but the words at the top were clear. Deed of title transfer. The Blackwood estate. I scanned the lines. Transfer of ownership. From Sebastian, Duke of Blackwood, to Miss Alara Vance. I stared at it. I looked up at him. "I don't understand," I whispered. This says you are giving me the house?" "I am," Sebastian said quietly. "The house. The grounds. The London townhouse. It's all yours, Alara." "But why?" "Because it is dead without you," he said. He stood up and began to pace the small room, his agitation returning. "When you left, the house died. The servants stopped smiling. The clocks seemed to stop ticking. I walked through those halls, Alara, and I realized that Blackwood Manor wasn't my home. It was just a pile of stones. You were the home." He stopped and looked at me. "I thought my duty as a duke was to preserve the stones," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought I had to marry for money to save the legacy. I was a fool. I was a blind, arrogant fool." He walked back to the bed and knelt on the floor. He didn't care about the dirt on his knees. He looked up at me with terrifying vulnerability. "I would rather live in a cottage with you than in a palace with anyone else," he said. "If the estate is in debt, let it be in debt. We will sell the paintings. We will sell the horses. I will work as a clerk if I have to, but I will not sell my soul again." He took the deed from my hands and tossed it onto the nightstand as if it were trash. "I don't want to be the Duke if you aren't the Duchess." Tears pricked my eyes. This was the vindication I had dreamed of. He didn't just miss my work. He missed me. "But the debts, Sebastian," I whispered. "We can't just ignore them." He smiled then. A small, crooked smile. "I sold the racing stud," he said. "The black stallion. And the hunting lodge in Scotland." My eyes widened. "You loved that stallion. And the lodge? It's been in your family for generations." "They were just things, Alara," he said softly. "I sold them to pay off the most pressing debts. We aren't rich. In fact, compared to Genevieve, we are quite poor. But we are free." He reached into his pocket again. This time, he didn't pull out a document. He pulled out a ring. The cheap, tarnished silver ring I had left on his pillow. "You left this," he said, his voice trembling. "It was the hardest moment of my life, finding this ring. It felt like you had cut me out of your heart. I had to," I cried softly. "It hurt too much to keep it." "Take it back," he pleaded. "Please." He took my left hand. He didn't slide the ring onto my pinky finger where I used to wear it. He slid it onto my ring finger. "Marry me, Alara," he whispered. "Not to manage my house, not to balance my ledgers, not to be my companion." He kissed my hand. "Marry me to manage my heart. Marry me because I cannot breathe when you are not in the room. Marry me because I love you." The tears finally spilled over. "You love me?" I have loved you since we were children, he said. I was just too stupid to realize that love was more important than duty. Please, Alara, say yes. I looked at the silver ring. It wasn't a diamond. It wasn't impressive, but it was real. Yes, I whispered. Yes, Sebastian. He let out a shout of joy, a raw, unpolished sound that filled the small room. He pulled me into his arms, burying his face in my neck, weeping with relief. And for the first time in 3 months, I held him back. 2 weeks later, we returned to London. The gossip columns were in a frenzy. The Mad Duke had returned, and he wasn't alone. We pulled up to the opera house. It was the height of the season. Everyone was there. Lady Genevieve, the creditors, the gossip mongers. The carriage door opened. Sebastian stepped out first. He looked magnificent. He was shaved, dressed in immaculate black evening wear, but the harsh lines of stress were gone from his face. He turned and held out his hand. I stepped out. I wasn't wearing gray wool anymore. I was wearing a gown of deep sapphire blue silk. Around my neck was the blackwood diamond necklace, the family heirloom reserved for the Duchess. But on my hand, I wore only the silver ring. A hush fell over the crowd. Is that the ward? Someone whispered. Is that the companion? Sebastian ignored them all. He tucked my hand into the crook of his arm. He looked down at me, and the love in his eyes was so potent, so undeniable, that it silenced the street. He didn't look ashamed. He looked triumphant. We walked up the steps of the opera house. Lady Genevieve was standing near the entrance. She looked at me. She looked at the diamonds. She looked at the way Sebastian held me as if I were precious glass. She looked down and turned away. We walked into the light. The wedding was small. We didn't invite the ton. We invited the staff. Mrs. Higgins cried through the whole service. James the valet stood as the best man. We were married in the village church where we met as children. When the priest asked Sebastian for the ring, he didn't produce a new gold band. He simply touched the silver ring on my finger. With this ring, he whispered, echoing the promise he made years ago. I thee worship. He kissed me. And in that kiss, the shadows of the past dissolved. The lonely girl in the attic was gone. The cold, dutiful Duke was gone. There was only Sebastian and Alara. As we walked out of the church into the bright sunshine, the bells ringing out across the countryside, Sebastian leaned down to my ear. Are you happy, my Duchess? He asked. I squeezed his hand. I am home, Sebastian, I said. I am finally home. And so, the Duke found what he was looking for. Not a fortune, but a future. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If Ilara and Sebastian's journey touched your heart, please leave a heart emoji in the comments. And don't forget, next week, we trade the ballroom for the high seas. A pirate captain, a kidnapped heiress, and a storm of a different